The office lights buzzed faintly above, casting a dull glow over Amara's cluttered desk. She sat hunched over, rubbing her temples, exhaustion creeping into her bones. Another long day at Adewale and Company. Real estate, a prestigious firm where she worked as an assistant project manager. Her boss, Victor Adewale, wasn't the owner of the company, but he acted like he was. It was his uncle's business, but Victor ran it with an iron fist, making it his personal empire. He had a reputation, ruthless, dismissive, and impossible to please. No one dared to question his authority. If he didn't like something, it was trash. And today, her work had been trash. Redo everything. This is pathetic, he had said coldly, barely looking up from his phone. She had spent weeks perfecting the proposal, only for him to toss it aside like a worthless document. No explanation, no feedback, just rejection. And as if work wasn't already draining her, her personal life was falling apart too. In just a few months, she was supposed to be getting married to the man she had loved for years. But lately, things with Daniel had been off. They had fought 3 nights ago. A stupid argument, something about wedding planning and his lack of effort. But what truly hurt was that he hadn't reached out since. No calls, no messages, just silence. That wasn't like him. As she finally stepped into her apartment, kicking off her heels with a sigh, the loneliness settled in. A long, hot shower washed away the grime of the day, but it couldn't wash away the frustration bubbling inside her. Standing before the mirror, her damp skin glowing under the bathroom light, she felt an impulse, a reckless urge to remind Daniel exactly what he was missing. Grabbing her phone, she posed, her confidence igniting as she took 5 intimate, teasing photos. If he had forgotten what he had, this would remind him. A playful smirk tugged at her lips as she walked to the bedroom, still wrapped in a towel. "Hey Siri, send my last 5 pictures to my fiancé," she murmured absent-mindedly, tossing her phone onto the nightstand before sinking into bed, exhaustion finally winning the battle. She never heard Siri's chilling response. Sunlight streamed through the curtains when Amara stirred awake, stretching lazily before reaching for her phone. A groggy smile crossed her face. Maybe Daniel had replied. Maybe he had gotten the pictures and realized what a fool he was for ignoring her. She unlocked her phone, heart racing with excitement, and then her blood ran cold. Her messages were open. The chat at the top of the list wasn't Daniel's. It was Victor Adewale. Her lungs squeezed painfully, eyes widening in sheer horror as she tapped the thread. The 5 pictures, all sent, all marked as read. Amara's breath hitched. Her stomach twisted into a suffocating knot, the air suddenly thick and unbreathable. No, 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 no! Her fingers trembled as she tried to process what she was seeing. This was a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. She sat up violently, gripping her phone so tight her knuckles turned white. Her entire body shook as she clicked on Victor's profile, as if the app had made an error, as if somehow the universe could undo this catastrophe. But there was no mistake. Victor Adewale, the arrogant, cold, impossible-to-please manager who treated people like pawns, had received all her pictures, and he had seen them. She gasped for air, but it felt like drowning. "Oh my God, no, no, no!" Her fingers flew to the chat options. Delete, delete, delete. But the damage was already done. She couldn't take it back. Her heart slammed against her ribs as a new, horrifying thought crashed into her mind. What if he responded? What if he called her into his office? What if he used this against her? The screen blurred as tears welled in her eyes. This was no longer just a bad day. This was ruin. Amara's stomach was in knots the moment she stepped out of the elevator. The long, cold corridor leading to Victor Adewale's office felt narrower today, suffocating. Her phone buzzed again. Victor. My office. Now. She didn't need the reminder. The moment she walked in earlier, she had felt the weight of his eyes on her, the silent command in the way his gaze lingered. She had delayed this meeting, as much as she could, but there was no avoiding it now. She took a deep breath, straightened her blouse, and knocked lightly before stepping inside. Victor was lounging in his leather chair, his back slightly reclined, one arm draped lazily over the desk as if he had all the time in the world. The moment she walked in, he locked his sharp eyes on her, and without a word, he reached for his phone. He tapped the screen once, turned it towards her, and there they were, the pictures. Amara's entire body went rigid. The air around her thickened, suffocating. Victor exhaled, almost amused, shaking his head. "Tell me, Amara, exactly what were you thinking?" His tone was mocking, almost condescending. He flicked through the images slowly, too slowly, as if savoring the moment. Her face burned with humiliation. "Sir, please," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was a mistake. I meant to send them to my fiancé. I don't even know how—" Victor leaned forward, resting his elbow on the desk, his fingers lazily tapping against the wood. "Your fiancé," he repeated, like he was testing the word on his tongue. His lips twitched into a smirk. "And yet, here they are, on my phone." Amara swallowed hard. "Sir, please delete them. I didn't mean—" He let out a slow chuckle, shaking his head. "You know, I should be offended, Amara," he said, standing up, moving around the desk with a measured, deliberate pace. She instinctively took a step back. He noticed and smirked. "You sent these to me, and you didn't even send a follow-up message? No, enjoy the view, sir. No, let me know what you think." He clicked his tongue. "I expected better manners." Her stomach twisted with rage and embarrassment. "Victor, please, just delete them." "Of course," he mused, tilting his head slightly. "But you see, this is an opportunity." She stiffened. "I was going through my emails earlier," he continued, his voice low, almost teasing. "And guess what I saw?" He turned, walked to his desk, and picked up a printed letter. Her letter. The one she had sent to the board of directors, demanding an explanation for why she had been in the company for 5 years with no promotion, no salary increase, despite her contributions. She had written it with conviction, with courage, laying out the unfair treatment she had endured. And now, it was in his hands. Amara's breath hitched. Victor's gaze darkened as he leaned back against his desk, holding the letter up like it was some kind of joke. "So, let me get this straight," he mused. "You sent a complaint to the board of directors, my uncle included, saying you're being treated unfairly?" She held her ground, lifting her chin. "I deserve a raise. I deserve a promotion. I've worked hard for 5 years, while others who contribute less get ahead." Victor chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. "Admirable," he murmured. "Really. But you see, now you're going to take it back." Amara froze. "What?" Victor's smirk grew wider. He held the letter between 2 fingers, waving it slightly. "You're going to withdraw this complaint. Tell the board you were mistaken, that you're grateful for what you have." Her stomach dropped. "No," she said, her voice firm. Victor's eyes gleamed. He placed his phone back on the desk, the pictures still on display. "Are you sure about that?" Her heart pounded painfully. He pushed himself off the desk, stepping closer. Too close. She could feel his presence, the faint scent of his cologne, the weight of his stare. "Because if you don't," he murmured, voice low, "things could get complicated." She felt sick. She needed that raise, that promotion, not just for herself, but for Daniel, for their wedding. The money had already been tight, the preparations were falling apart, and without this, she had no way to support him. Victor saw the hesitation flicker in her eyes, and he smiled. "You've worked hard for 5 years," he said, circling her like a predator. "But we both know one little scandal can destroy all of that. 5 years gone in an instant." Her fists clenched. You disgust me, she spat. Victor laughed. Oh, Amara, that's not very nice. She sucked in a sharp breath, rage bubbling in her chest. You're a coward, she hissed. You think you can control people because your uncle owns this company? You didn't even earn your position. You just inherited power. That's the only reason you can pull something like this. His smirk didn't waver. If anything, he looked amused. And yet, he said smoothly, you're the one standing here, with a choice to make. The air between them was suffocating. Amara needed that money. She needed her job. But signing away her dignity? Her fingers trembled as she reached for the letter. Victor's smirk widened. Good girl, he murmured. Amara gritted her teeth, fire burning behind her eyes as she snatched it from his grip. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Amara stormed out of Victor's office, her nails digging into her palms as she clenched her fists. Her entire body burned with rage. She had never felt so powerless. Victor had backed her into a corner she never should have been in. And now, because of one stupid mistake, he held all the power. She needed that raise. She needed the money. Not for luxury, not for fun. For her future. For Daniel. For their wedding. She couldn't afford to lose her job. The thought made her stomach twist with frustration and shame. She entered her office and shut the door, her breath coming in short gasps. She forced herself to inhale deeply, to regain control. Then, she sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Victor had made it clear. She was supposed to send an email to the board withdrawing her complaint. She was supposed to thank them for the opportunities she had been given and pretend she was content with her stagnant position. She was supposed to let Victor win. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. She pulled up her original email, the one she had sent 3 days ago, outlining her 5 years of hard work, her lack of promotion, and the unfair treatment she had endured. She stared at the words. This was the truth, but if she didn't take it back, Victor would ruin her. A lump formed in her throat as she deleted the email and started typing a new one. She stared at the email. Her stomach churned. Every word felt like a betrayal to herself, but she had no choice. Amara grabbed her bag, eager to leave the office, eager to breathe. The day had drained every ounce of energy from her, the humiliation, the fear, the anger. She just needed to get home, curl up under her sheets, and pretend today never happened. But just as she reached the elevator, a voice stopped her in her tracks. Not so fast, Amara. She froze. Her fingers gripped her bag strap tightly as she turned around to see Victor. He leaned casually against the wall, arms crossed, his usual smug smirk firmly in place. But there was something different this time, something in his eyes that made her skin crawl. She forced a polite expression, pretending she wasn't dying to escape. Sir, I really need to get home. Victor chuckled. Oh, I bet you do, he murmured, stepping forward. But we need to talk. Amara's stomach twisted. She took a small step back. About what? Victor's smirk deepened as he leaned in, his voice low, taunting. The pictures were a good start, but I want more than just your job, Amara. His eyes roamed over her slowly, shamelessly, as if she were something to be claimed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. What do you mean? She whispered, her throat dry. Victor chuckled, his fingers sliding into his pockets like this was just another business deal. Oh, don't play innocent now. I know you're a smart woman. I'm saying I want you. Amara's blood ran ice cold. He stepped even closer, his breath brushing her ear. I can already imagine how good you'd be in bed. And trust me, Amara, I'm a man who always gets what he wants. She recoiled, her stomach churning. You're disgusting, she spat, her voice trembling with rage. Victor only laughed. Oh, come on. Don't act so righteous. You sent those pictures to me, didn't you? Maybe, deep down, you wanted me to see them. Amara's jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I told you already it was a mistake. Victor tilted his head, his smirk turning darker. "And I told you that mistakes come with consequences." Her fists clenched. "I did what you wanted. I withdrew my complaint. What more do you want?" Victor's gaze turned predatory. "Like I said, you—" Amara felt bile rise in her throat. "I would rather die than let you touch me." Victor clicked his tongue. "Tsk, tsk, Amara. That's a shame. Because if you refuse, let's just say, I won't be keeping those pictures to myself anymore." Her chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. Victor smiled as he leaned in again. "Tomorrow I'll be calling you. And when I do, you'll answer, and we'll set up a time. You and me, or, well, you know what happens next." Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Victor studied her for a moment, enjoying her torment, then leaned in one last time. "Sweet dreams, Amara," he whispered before walking away. She stood there, shaking. Her hands fisted at her sides, nails digging into her skin, but she barely felt it. This wasn't just about blackmail anymore. This was war. She needed help. The next day, Amara sat stiffly at her desk, staring at her screen, but she wasn't seeing anything. Her hands trembled on the keyboard. Her mind replayed last night's horror over and over again. A sharp knock at her office door startled her. Before she could answer, Cecilia pushed the door open and stepped in, closing it behind her. Amara's stomach dropped. Cecilia was the last person she wanted to deal with right now. The woman was the biggest gossip in the office, always hovering in the hallways, catching snippets of conversations, spreading rumors before they were even fully formed. And the way she was looking at Amara now, she knew something. Amara's chest tightened. "Cecilia, I'm really not in the mood to—" "You're in trouble, aren't you?" Cecilia cut in, her voice lower than usual. Amara froze. Her heart pounded. Cecilia stepped forward, arms crossed. "I heard you and Victor talking last night." Amara's blood ran cold. No. She had been so careful, so sure that no one else had been in the hallway. Her breath caught in her throat. "Cecilia, whatever you think you heard, I heard enough." Cecilia's gaze sharpened. "I know he's blackmailing you." Amara felt sick. Panic gripped her, tight and suffocating. Cecilia wasn't exactly known for keeping secrets. If she told the wrong person, if this spread around the office, it was over. But before Amara could shut her down, Cecilia took another step closer and lowered her voice. "I also know you're too scared to do anything about it," she murmured. "That's why you need me." Amara's fingers dug into her desk. "I don't need anyone," she snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. Cecilia didn't flinch. "You sure about that?" she asked. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like a woman about to break." Amara clenched her jaw, hating how true that was. Her body felt like it was held together by sheer willpower alone. She was exhausted. She was drowning, and she had no one. She sucked in a shaky breath and whispered, "I don't trust you." Cecilia gave a small, knowing smile. "That's fair." She leaned against the desk, lowering her voice. "But lucky for you, you don't have a choice." Amara's throat tightened. She knew Cecilia was right. Victor had backed her into a corner, and if she had any hope of getting out of this alive, she needed to take a risk. She exhaled shakily and whispered, "He has pictures of me. Private ones. I sent them to the wrong number and now he's using them against me." Cecilia's eyes darkened. "And what does he want in return?" Amara looked down, ashamed. "Me." For a second, Cecilia didn't say anything. Then her expression turned ice cold. "That bastard." Amara swallowed. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "If I go to HR, if I report him, he'll leak them. My career, my engagement. It'll be over." Cecilia's eyes flickered with calculations. She was already thinking, plotting. Then, suddenly, she smirked. "You're right. Going to HR won't work." She tilted her head. But that doesn't mean you don't have other options. Amara frowned. What do you mean? Cecilia leaned in, her expression unreadable. Just trust me. Do exactly what I say. Amara hesitated. She still didn't fully trust Cecilia, but at this point, she had nothing left to lose. She nodded. Okay. Cecilia smiled. Good. Now let's fix this. Victor leaned back in his leather chair, rolling up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Everything was falling into place. He reached for his phone, scrolling through the pictures once more, his ego swelling at the power he held over her. She'll come, he muttered to himself, standing up and adjusting his watch. Tonight, she would understand who was really in charge. Whistling softly, he grabbed his car keys and stepped out of his office, his mind already picturing the perfect evening. But what Victor didn't know was that the game had changed. The trap was already set. And by the time the night was over, he wouldn't be the one in control anymore. What do you think will happen next? Will Amara finally take Victor down, or will his threats destroy her? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support